go. There goes my iPad. Let me just put something behind it to stop it from falling down. That's not so good. Nope, it's not staying. That'll stop it. Big 10. Welcome to 16 Style Types. Today I'm just waiting for Jill Chivers to come online, and she'll be here any moment now. We're going to be talking about the two functions, the two perceiving functions, which are sensing and intuition. So these two functions come as a second letter. So you'll have one of those two letters in your type code. And so you'll either have an S or an N. The N is for intuition. And I know that intuition starts with the letter I, but because introvert also starts with the letter I, it was decided that N would be the representative letter of that type, so as not to get confused with introversion, which is the I that comes with either the E or the I, which is extroversion and introversion. So both S and N are perceiving functions, and they are how we bring in or learn information, how we gather the information around us. So even if you don't have a P on the end of your type code, you still do perceive. It's just part of the formula as such, and there's a formula to how the type code is put together. So whether you get the P or the J, which I'm not going to go into right now, but they're both our perceiving. So bringing in learning information, and you know, kind of how that's going. So today, sensing relates to our senses and the real concrete world, and how, you know, you can feel it, see it, touch it, time, kind of all those, memory, what's happened in the past, experiences you've had. They all relate to the sensing function. They're kind of like descriptors. There's different sorts of sensing, but they're all in a relationship there. Yes, Jill is trying to find me. Sometimes it just takes a moment to find. So hopefully she'll be with me in a second. I'm just going to write her a little quick note. So that's our sensing function. Then we have our intuitive function. So intuition is bringing in. Sorry, Jill's just asking me some questions. Okay, here we are. There she comes. All good. We have our intuitive function. This is often called gut, the gut feel. Hi, Elaine, how are you? It's lovely to have you here. Nice, good, Jill's back.
Yes.
Sometimes it's like, it's not bringing it up. Why isn't it coming up?
I know. Technology can be so very trying. It can.
Yeah, but we're all here, so that's good. So I've just been talking about the sensing and just function, or just a little bit about introducing the intuitive function. What would you say about intuition, Jill?
Sensing and intuition, two sides of the perceiving coin, according to Carl Jung, C.G. Jung, as he was often referred to. So two different ways of taking in information. That alone, you could spend half a day just discussing that concept alone. Two different ways of taking in information. That can be such an insightful and helpful observation, just to recognize not everybody does it the way that you do. And for me, as someone preferring sensing, to recognize this other way, this intuitive way, and that it's very different to me. Intuition, all about ideas and connections, and often hunches and visions and possibilities and options. And of course, sometimes sensors will hear this and go, yeah, I can do that. And the answer is, yeah, you can do that, but you do it really differently. You do it with a different degree of energy. You'll probably fatigue earlier. It isn't the same way of engaging with intuition if you prefer sensing than if you prefer intuition. And that's really, really valuable to know. We talk about the 16 types as being like a house with 16 rooms, and you can walk into any room, but some rooms are just not decorated in a way that makes you feel comfortable, and the intuitive rooms can be like that. You can walk into them, but you might not want to stay there very long, and it's not because you don't like anybody there, it's just because you don't get it. It's just not you. And I think this can be one of the things that can trip up S's and N's, and S is just not realizing just how very, very differently intuitives take in data.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's not that we don't get our data from the real world. So I'm an intuitive, like, so my data still comes from reading things, seeing things, hearing things, experiencing things. I still bring in my data, but then I just process it differently. In a way. But one of the things, I think this is a good example. The other day I was at the gym, and there was we have to walk up 2 flights of stairs to get to the gym. And, quite often you're walking up with other people. Now, what's fascinating, and this has happened because there was some spiders in there. I didn't even notice the spiders because they're up on the ceiling and I'm not looking at the ceiling. Like, and there's one on the wall over there and there's another one over there. And I'm like completely oblivious to these things. Because I'm just thinking about going up and going to the gym, and I'm kind of concentrating. For me, I have to concentrate on walking up the stairs so I don't trip on the stairs.
Right.
Versus the other women, they're all going, oh my God, there's a spider, oh my God, there's a spider, and they're all getting all freaked out by the spiders. If you hadn't pointed the spiders out, I wouldn't have seen them. I'm guessing they were sensors.
Could very well have been.
And it's one of those things. It's interesting that I know I've nearly fallen on stairs many times in my life. So I have to hold on to the banister. I often feel like, and even when I was very young, I always have to hold on to the banister because I've saved myself on a number of occasions of, and I think part of it, I'm not quite as aware of my physical body.
Yeah.
Has made some sensors often have much more a gift there in that part of, well, not all of them, but that there's certainly more of that.
SP in particular, yeah.
An awareness
I
of
the banister too, but it's because I'm wearing ridiculously high wedge heels and I'm frightened I'm going to fall down the stairs and break my neck. So yes, but a very good point about awareness of what's around you. And generally there's 2 flavors of sensing and 2 flavors of intuition. And we often ascribe to the extroverted senses, which are 4 of the 16 types, this ability to be much more in tune with the physical environment. They're very aware of what's going on around them. There are caveats to that. There are things they aren't aware of. So it tends to be in spheres in which they have a great interest or natural affinity. So, my husband is an SP. He imports classic Mustangs, mostly from California, and his fine-tune awareness around those things is very high. But, he still want to say, that's a nice dress. When did you get that? And I've had it for 10 years. So,
Yeah. He just knows you look nice, But yes, so when you talked about extroverted sensors, so they're the people with the P, an S and a P in their type code, have an extroverted sensing function. So how would you describe that as a whole, Jill?
Well, SPs often have a sense of physical attunement or physical comfort. So that they may be into sports or outdoors, or it may just be a sense of being aware in their own body and being comfortable in their own body. My brother is an SP and he is a tradesman, an electrician, but he can do anything. And he's done a lot of our renovations. And I would say to him, how do you do that? And he'll say, I don't know. His sense of the physical world, there's an affinity there, and they often don't know how they do things. Doesn't mean they're always sporty. So your daughter Neve is very sporty. That's how her SP is being manifested. Oftentimes we'll be at the dinner table and Neve will be doing a move, or she'll do a handstand. So
Yeah,
that's
she
another,
can't sit down for long
right?
and be
Yeah,
still like that. She then has to get up and move. But like I was teaching her to sew, and what
right.
was really fascinating is, she kind of wanted a little bit of explanation, but it was like, no, don't show me. Just like let me just do this thing. And it
She
was
wanted to
it
do
was
it herself.
yeah, wanted to
Mm,
do it herself. There was, and much less of a need that I would have needed a set of step-by-step instructions to learn how to do that. She
yeah,
doesn't need that in a way. So it's that kind of like your brother who just can fix things.
yeah. Hands-on experimentation.
Yeah,
SPs in learning environments, hands-on experimentation. And so you can imagine SPs in traditional learning environments, school environments, can often be very difficult because there's either not enough of it or it's not when they need it. So that's
yeah.
often one of the things that helps them to learn, is being able to touch and move and interact and smell and taste and all that.
Yeah. So how would you just decide what's the difference between an SP and an SJ? So an SJ has what we call introverted sensing, and that's a different flavor of sensing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, SJs, again, an attunement with the detail, but the orientation is often towards stability and things remaining the same. And so that's often a preoccupation with SJs is not too much change. Change often has to have a big lead up to it. There has to be a very good reason, capital V, capital G, capital R, for change to occur. How we've done it in the past experience informing current reality is a feature of SJs. So they will often look to how things have been done before, either how they did them before or how somebody else did them before. So they can often suffer from what's been called blank sheet of paper syndrome, or just a fear of having no place to start. There are often other people who need a place to start. They will sequence the steps themselves, often without missing a step. This is different to SPs, who can jump steps because they compress them together, or they can see, a more efficient way of doing things. SJs generally don't. They will go through every step. Even if the step they're going through, they can see is a little bit redundant, it's on the list, so I'm going to do it. So there can be this sense of sort of dogged adherence to rules. You can get a little bit of that.
Yeah, see, it's funny you speaking about that. It reminds me of there's two people in my life who are SJs, ISTJs. I think both of them are. My son, who he was really young, if I moved the furniture around, he would be in tears.
Right.
Like this, dealing with a change that seemed to be totally unnecessary because the furniture was perfectly placed before.
Yeah.
There was nothing
Very
wrong.
disruptive.
Very disruptive. And my father, he'll start telling you a story, and if you interrupt him, he has to go right back to the beginning and work through it step by step by step. He can't just pick
Sequence.
up. Yeah, and he has to tell you, and it's got to have all this. It's almost like that. I've got to pull out the first file and then the second, and there's this order that's going through this. And if you interrupt that, it's like, oh, if I don't go back to the beginning, he can't even cope himself.
Yeah, he's lost the narrative. He's lost the thread of the narrative. Yeah, my dad, I believe, has ISFJ preferences, are slightly different, but the same thing. If you interrupt him,
Yes,
you can see the pause button being pushed, and
yes,
the conversation will move on. And honestly, it could be an hour later, and it's like the pause button comes off, and he just commences the narrative from the point that it stopped at. So this ability to jump around is less there in SJs. What about the intuitive types? What about the NPs and their extroverted intuition, and the NJs and their introverted intuition?
they're different from each other as well. And it's interesting. I am an NJ, so we have what we call introverted intuition, which I see as a kind of a converging of ideas. So there's this a whole world of ideas out here, and it's like a funnel, and I'm funneling them all down, and then kind of picking the most, so getting to the crux of the matter, getting to the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
Um, so it's often like described, if kind of talk in analogies and things. It's like like there's all this stuff, there's a big mist, and then the mist clears and the answer becomes obvious. In many ways, it's something that particularly my SJ people in my life find very difficult to understand.
Yeah.
Because it appears a little magical or mystery, and it's because it doesn't seem to be based on logical, concrete facts that I've experienced before. You can show me right now. I remember growing up, my dad was always asking me, in what medical journal or what journal, what journal did you get that from? And I want to know the number and the paragraph and the, I was like, I just know this. It's like this knowing without knowing.
Yeah.
And and you could call that gut instinct in many ways, because it seems to just come from somewhere. But really, it's this I've brought in all the information through my senses, and then I've just distilled it down into this this idea or whatever it might be that's appeared. But my SJ husband, he's an ESTJ, he'll always be going, never assume, you can't assume that. How am I supposed to know? Because I'll be predicting the future. And I think that's the other thing with intuition. Unlike his SJ, which is looking very much back at the past, how we've done it before, how things have happened, intuitives tend to have a future focus. So it's looking at how the future might play out. And so I'll make predictions about how people will behave based on, to me, it's based on past facts. But I'm like going, well, based on all this behavior, I'm seeing this pattern. So therefore, if this is the pattern I'm seeing repeated over and over, I don't see why that this is not a really great assumption. And he'll be going, well, you can't assume. Can't assume. I'm going, but I can. So it causes a lot of conflict sometimes.
It can. One of the key differences between NJs and NPs is NJs are often considered, the phrase is often what will be, whereas with NPs, it's what could be. So what about extroverted intuition, the NPs of the world?
So this is more, I think, a divergence of ideas. So it's the opposite way of this. It's an explosion of ideas. And Jill, you've often described it as popcorn in some ways. It's this outwards explosion of, like, you could do this or this or this or this or this. And there's so many possibilities. And you'll often see this play out in people's lives with having a lot of very different careers. Or I start one business one week and then I start a different business the next week and start something new the week after. There's a lot of, there's all these ideas and it's going down these different roads. And so it's this, it's much more this, interesting diversion. They're the most brilliant brainstormers. I think intuitives are better brainstormers probably on the whole. They've got probably more of these, ideas, but then we probably enjoy brainstorming. You say you don't enjoy it that much. It's much more fatiguing, versus we can brainstorm for much longer on the whole. But then it's that different flavors, versus it'll be the extroverted intuitives who come up with the, it's the shoe phone. I always look at Maxwell Smart and the shoe phone and I'll go, that has got to have been written by an NP. And to me, I look at some of these, it's particularly in the science fiction realm where there's this really kooky ideas and go, there's got to be so NP. Would you say that, Jill?
Yes, in my facilitation kit, I have a set of cards, laminated cards. They're called Ask Einstein, and there's much debate about what type Einstein was. Some people think INTP, which would make him an extroverted intuitive in the auxiliary position. And these cards, there's about 200 in them, and they're all different colors, and they have a range of different things. It's designed for brainstorming. It's designed for non-NPs to get into brainstorming. And so the cards say things as randomly as, what if it was orange? What if it was Chanel? What if it was younger? What if it was yesterday? What if it was marmalade? What if it was a panda? These kinds of things. And I have seen people in the room going, I know this is English, but apart from that, I have no idea how to use this. And for me, it's a facsimile for what NPs do normally, this ability to connect things that you go, how did you put these things together? And they often can't explain it. They just know how things connect. And they are the people who will literally go, it's step 22, then let's come back to 1C. We don't need all of the ones in the teens. Oh, look, there's a butterfly. I was thinking about pandas the other day, and then boom, and you have something that bears no resemblance to anything in the past. It has that sense of original innovation to it, and it can be amazing and wonderful, and it can be very unsettling and destabilizing to those who don't think that way, particularly to S's.
Yeah. And I think one of the interesting things is actually how this plays out in our style, because intuitives tend to have, some different style needs than sensors do. So as a sensor, what would you describe the way that you might approach style, or that sensors would approach style?
With the details. It's not with a vision. There's the overarching vision might be arrived at by putting all of the pieces together. SJs would probably start with steps 1 and work up in a sequential, methodical fashion. SPs would just collect the data more, slightly more jigsaw puzzly kind of way. It's all there, it's all tangible, and it's chunked down, and they're putting it together in a slightly different way, but it's detail. It is putting the detail together. And of course, one of the things they can miss is the overall vibe, sense, look. And, we've had that conversation as well, how that's an important checkpoint for sensors, is to do that stepping back and saying, does the whole thing in its entirety, not in an additive or collection of details, does it make sense, work, whatever it is? But it's a detail orientation.
And now I think you've discussed this in the past, where you went through your own stylish phase of life, and that's because you were learning all the rules
and following them.
following them to the letter, which is where kind of that's boring happens, isn't it? In some ways, kind of following it to the letter is where boring happens, rather than adding your own piece of personality. And also that I think that when you follow things to the letter, you're not seeing the big picture. And so what I think maybe that's happened as you've learned to step back. You've got all the details pinned down, but then it's also stepping back and seeing that bigger picture of, does the whole work as well as the series of parts.
And another, just a little example from my life, but probably relevant to a lot of S's, is having one thing that works. So for me, signature style being leopard print, can become very tunnel visioned in terms of, it's leopard print, it's fine. And the same degree of that slowing down, checking, does it fit in all the different ways it needs to fit? Is it an 8? All of those things are really, really important, because if you have a detail that works for you, and it might not be something like that, it might be straight lines, or it might be something to do, exactly. Then sometimes you can short circuit all the things that need to happen to check that item actually still works. Just because it meets that one criteria doesn't mean it works.
Yes. And so I suppose...
What about intuitives? How would they go about putting their style together?
Well, how's it different? We've noticed is that definitely there is a mood. There is always a mood, like versus my daughter will get dressed on, well, what's the weather today? And that comes into my case, but it's that she has a formula in a way. If it's over 20 degrees, I wear a dress, or my shirt and top. If it's over 25, I wear my school dress. If it's under 20, I wear my long pants. She's basically, it's like, that's it. Versus, I suppose I have this idea in my head of how I want to feel that day, or what I want to communicate that day, or there'll be something there. And then it's out of what's in my wardrobe, what feels right. And until I hit on what is right, and I can have planned an outfit out the night before where I'll think, I think tomorrow I'm going to wear X, Y, or Z. And then I'll wake up in the morning and go, nah, don't feel like that anymore. It's not feeling right. In fact, until I'm dressed in something that feels right, I can't actually let go of that and think about the thing. It keeps interrupting my day in a way that may not happen, I don't think, in the same way with sensors.
Yeah. And what about NPs? How do you think they go about it?
They often, well, it depends on what flavour of NP too, whether it's an NFP or an NTP. They can actually be quite different from each other. I think they're probably two that are really often very different from each other, just that other function brought into this picture. But there's definitely a mood thing. And then there can be is it creative self-expression? Is it, this is where some of the NFPs are the most creative dressers we've seen. And they're the people who will go, I'm going to try on I'm going to wear my leggings, cut a hole in them in the crotch and turn them into a top. Um, I'm going to wear my, you know, I'm going to try this shirt. I have an NFP friend and she'll get a man's business shirt and just wear it upside down. Or I'm going to wear my cardigan backwards. So I'm going to, like, they are the people who tend to just really push the boundary. So the SJs are going to, if a piece of, you know, garment was made to be worn in a certain way, that is how they are going to wear it. Some of the NPs, it's like, just because it was made like that does not mean I am going to wear it like that, you know.
Yeah, that sense of possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah, very different in approach to clothes and in approach to putting things together. And sometimes too that I'll have noticed that maybe some more of the NPs is it's more about a personal, what I want to wear or what I like wearing than is it appropriate? How will other people take it? Is it communicating in a way that's actually going to be an advantage to me? That can often be overlooked more frequently with the NPs than probably any other type. And it's really interesting when I'll have a conversation with an NP and I was talking to someone and he was saying, you know, I was doing this TV thing and they asked me, you know, because I'm a scientist, to put on a lab coat, but I never wear a lab coat. And I don't understand, why should I, if I don't wear a lab coat, I shouldn't have to wear a lab coat. And I'm going, okay, you've got to understand, you're going to be on TV, it's going to be a news story or something. It's going to be maybe 30 seconds to 2 minutes long maximum. They have to visually communicate that you're a scientist and you actually know what you're talking about. The easiest way to do that is with a piece of clothing that everybody in the world identifies as, he's a person who's got a degree in science. Like, just because you never wear one. You know, and he actually had great difficulty coming to grips with this idea that it was even because it wasn't, he didn't wear one, so why should he wear one? And people should just believe he has this big brain. And
right.
Yeah, so it was an interesting kind of thing to go. It was a struggle with that. Versus an SJ would have no issue going, yep, I'll put that lab coat on.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, where it's like, yep, I want to communicate that I'm appropriate and I know what I'm doing and I am a scientist. And if a lab coat says that and a lab coat says that, I'll wear that.
So what is it that sensing people do not understand about intuitives?
That it's actually not magical. That the stuff is based on fact in some way or other. It's just because you can't see the process doesn't mean it's not happening. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that it's like, you know, we have to learn to trust it ourselves. And this is where one of those things, particularly some, you know, I've talked to other INTJs who have gone like, because the world is constantly telling me that it can't possibly be right. I doubt myself rather than going, I have to learn to trust that. And the other thing, and I think too, that can be particularly, I know with my type, and I think INFJs are very similar in that way, is we have to have what we call percolation time. We can't force answers in a way that an SJ can probably come up with their answer based on the information they have fairly quickly. For us, there is this, I have to go inside myself. I have to let it go to my subconscious. And it has to kind of rattle around in there for a while sometimes before the thing pops out. And that's that mist clearing. I can't, you know, when it's a foggy day, you can't force the mist to clear, can you? You just have to wait for the sun to burn it off. And it's exactly that same thing. And so, you know, sometimes it's this pushing for an answer when the answer isn't there yet will not get you the answer that you necessarily want. You're more likely to shut down that intuitive than actually get what you're after. And I think that, so sometimes it's letting us have that space.
Yeah. And that's a wonderful thing for those of us who have introverted intuitives in our lives to recognize. How's it different for extroverted intuitives?
And I'm not one, I'm not quite as, you know, I'm not quite there as much. I don't know, because I think you probably have got more extroverted intuitives in your life that you probably see what the difference is there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I noticed is that ability to draw on information at any time and to change the plan. Now, I've just described something in very SJ terms. NPs often do not even think in that way. The whole idea that there was a plan and it's being changed can be news to them, because that's not how they think. So I've just overlaid my own type onto what it can be like to bump up against somebody who is taking in information all of the time and putting it into this ideas pot, and this sense of, so it's almost like the Thunderdome. You know, it's this sort of round thing where you can move in any direction and things can pop off. And when you have a linear, sequential, methodical way of working, and you're working with somebody who's like that, it can feel like you're constantly being derailed. That is not what's happening from the NP's perspective, and they can often feel like they're being sort of dragged down into this sort of turgid detail, this sort of unnecessary sort of, you know, pedestrianizing of fabulousness. This is how NPs have often described what it's like to work with somebody who doesn't have that sense of all these divergent ideas popping. And I think it can be quite spirit killing to NPs to have, you know, the sense of these balloons constantly being pulled down and nailed to the floor, when really they just need to be free.
Particularly if they haven't settled on which balloon they want.
Yeah, and it might not even be balloons. It might be meringues. You know, it might be panda bears. So yeah, it might not even be a food. So I think that this is where a lot of the tensions can happen. And in leadership programs, you know, we could debrief this for days, because there is a need in work environments for both big picture visioning, strategizing, conceptualizing. Where are we going? What can we see into the future? How confident are we about that? It needs to be balanced with, well, how do we do it? What are the practical steps? What might get in the way? What are the resources that are required? How are we going to plan it? What sort of dependencies? All those kinds of things. So they're a beautiful complement to one another, but they only complement when there's an understanding of those differences and a respect for the place that they have in making anything come to fruition. And knowledge alone doesn't bring that. The skills that are required to work against your own preferences can, I mean, it can just be enormous. You can feel like you're running the psychological type Olympics, because you're having to learn something that is so out of preference for you. It can be hugely energy consuming to work with someone who's very, very different to you.
Yes. I mean, if there were too many NPs in the room, they'd just keep reinventing the wheel. Nothing would ever get done.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and of course, the more you talk about these things, the more you can see, just at that level we've talked about there, NPs, NJs, SPs, SJs, how valuable all of them are, the contributions that they bring. They're all valuable. And of course, it's not to say that if you're an intuitive, you can't do detail. That's ridiculous. It's absurd. Just as it is to say if you're an S, you can't do the big picture. It's just your process for getting there is very, very different. And your tolerance and ability to be in that space is also very limited. Ns who are forced into doing detail for long periods of time, it's exhausting, and often the quality of their work drops the more they have to spend time in the detail. And the same is true in reverse. At some point, S is doing too much big picture visioning, brainstorming. They can contribute for a while, but then the quality of their contribution significantly drops. They're done. They're out.
They're out of art. Yeah, no more. So, and I think this is, like, understanding this does help you to understand the people around you, which, and that, you know, that people aren't trying to make you crazy. And I think that's
that's right. Yes.
Because often we
that's
can
just a side benefit. You being crazy, you know, it's unintended consequences.
But it is that, because often we can feel that they're just trying to, you know, why do they always do that? You know, they're trying to make me crazy. It's like, no, they just think in a different way. And every one of these ways is a gift. And I think this is what's we've found fascinating with style. That so an ISTJ might feel that their style is dull and boring when you compare it to an INFP. But it's not. Like an ISTJ style can be really beautiful. It's just going to be understated. It's never going to be kooky. It's never going to be out there. but it can be beautifully put together because they have that ability to see the detail, to put the things together, to, you know, follow a set of rules that actually works, and then build
Yeah.
something.
And that's an excellent point, because if you are listening to fashion advice that says, go radical, go crazy, change everything, turn your hair pink, get rid of everything, and, you know, make sure everything's asymmetrical and the colors are bold and bright. If you have a preference, say, for ISTJ or any of the other more understated or subtle types, and you take that advice, you can literally feel like the floor has dropped out on you. There is nothing stable that you can rely on when it comes to your style. And of course, unless you move to a nudist colony, you have to wear clothing. And so this is why one size fits all fashion advice can be so not only inappropriate, it can actually be damaging to some people. You know, go to a hairdresser who doesn't get who you are and what you need, and they suggest something radical, and, you know, depending on other elements of your type, you say yes, and you walk out and you're miserable. You're utterly miserable because those core elements, the essence of who you are, hasn't been understood or taken into consideration.
Yeah. And I think this even goes to how do you, you know, decide what stays in your wardrobe. The whole current, like, decluttering that is going on. That, you know, for some people, Marie Kondo's Sparking Joy works. And I would suspect it probably works for particularly some feeling types. You know, probably FPs, you know, that, you know, that, and that language too. But for probably an STJ, like, they're going, spark joy? Like,
what's that got to do with it?
Like, you know, it's like things don't, you know, like, so it's that going, well, how do I find my own way? How do I find a way that works for me? And how do I work with myself rather than using somebody else's language or using somebody else's system? And this is why you've got to find the systems of organization and stuff that work for you, because I really think, because the wardrobe is just one more place you have to organize stuff. And what I find fascinating with Marie Kondo is that the first place she goes is clothes.
Right.
That's really fascinating, because for a lot of people, clothes are one of their most personal things. So actually decluttering clothes, like, for some people, it's easy. They're not attached to their clothes in the same way. And she says the last place they go is books. Now, what's really fascinating is for some people, their books, they can throw it out after reading it. They have no attachment to it. So, you know, and other people, their books are, you know, are very precious. And so I think this is the same thing, where the, you know, for some people, like, going through a wardrobe, it's finding what is it that works for you. And so Marie Kondo's way will work for some people, but will be really foreign to others. And there are different ways. I read a book recently that I actually thought is a very SP way of decluttering. I thought this will, and it's interesting because, or even just a, you know, probably FP, possibly an FP way, where I went, oh, I can see that that is a much more P way versus some other, like a lot of, I suspect an awful lot of professional organisers are J's.
Yeah, well, they come by it naturally. Yeah,
they come by it naturally, so it's easy for them. But those rules don't necessarily work for particularly our P friends, and P, you know, housemates and P family who go. But I, you know, my daughter says, you know, I just don't need to have my room like, it really doesn't bother me if there's stuff on the floor. It doesn't bother me there's, you know, that my desk is covered in bits and pieces. That just, versus my son, he'll always just go, I never let my room get dirty, then I never have to tidy it up. He just immediately puts everything away, and it's not a, I haven't had to teach him that. He just does it. Comes to him naturally.
Well, I'll never forget a professional program I ran for a global services firm, and a lot of the people there, senior managers, directors, had young families. So children would often come up, and children are very good laboratory, particularly if they are allowed to be themselves to, you know, some degree, you know, different styles of parenting. And this one young man was telling us about how his 4-year-old daughter just naturally organised her possessions by colour. Now, he was a J, his wife was not. And he said, we haven't taught her this. I mean, you know, this is not something we've said. She just wants to organise her possessions by colour. And I mean, I think that's very telling, I think, you know, when a 4-year-old wants to organise by any structure, but by colour, you know. So Is there anything else about sensing and intuition? Because that's sort of been our focus that we want to leave people with.
I don't know. I think, one of the things is like you've talked about in the past about how, you will put together an outfit. Like you can easily plan outfits. I think particularly senses may have more of an ability, particularly SJs probably of I'm going to plan my week's worth of outfits. And that's an easy thing. I actually have a friend and I look at now and she told me that she's a high school teacher and she said, in my school holidays, I'll go into my wardrobe, I'll create 40 outfits, I'll photograph them, and then I'll basically wear them. That's the 40 days of term sort of thing. I'll basically wear them through the term. And I thought, well, that worked great for you, but I'd be like, I don't feel like that today.
Yeah.
So it's also understanding your type as well, because that I think that really understanding. My husband, who's also an SJ, will go, "You're not dressed yet," whilst I'm still standing in front of the wardrobe, trying to decide what I feel like today, what is my mood today, and which pieces of clothing are going to help me express that mood. So I just think it's like allowing yourself to be you, and not trying to force yourself to do it the way a different type might, because I think that's also something that we often feel like I should be. I think there's so many shoulds that because we read it in a magazine or we read it somewhere or we were told somewhere and this is the way that everybody says we have to do it. And so I think all this layer of shoulds that you have to peel that back and go, well, but what is me? And is that the right way for me?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why we're so excited about 16 Style Types. We are in our knowledge the world's first and only website that marries style and psychology in the way that we have, and hoping to bring to a lot of women a sense that who they are naturally is not only acceptable, it's great. And when you understand that, and when every choice you make emanates from that sense of who you really are, you have a sense of both comfort and freedom. It's both safe and stimulating. It gives you a solid foundation and a wonderful place to explore from. And so that's really what our mission is to help bring women home to themselves and be their best and fullest and most stylish selves.
Yeah. So we'll leave you there today. I think, hopefully you found this a little bit interesting. Always happy to have some questions, and we'll be back next month talking more things style and type, and hopefully giving you a little window and understanding into why you might do things the way you do them, and that there's actually nothing wrong with that. Because I think that's we often feel like, it's that shoulds and coulds, that it's great to go, actually, that is me, and that's okay. I'm okay. And I think if that's what we can leave the world with, that feeling, that'll be a wonderful thing.